Look at how stupid that looks. He was already a terrible character to begin with. How does anybody take you seriously with strawberries for hands? Oh, come on! It has got to be tricky packaging a game to appeal to kids. In a way, you just need bright colors, friendly looking and goofy characters, some poop and fart jokes, or maybe that's all I needed. I mean, to be frank, I don't even need bright colors as long as the poop and fart jokes are good enough. How's it going, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to today's review of Bugsnax on the PS5. My name is Ed, and I'm your host. My favorite examples of products that work for both kids and adults are the 90s Warner Brothers cartoons, mainly Tiny Toon Adventures and Animaniacs. These are cartoons that were crazy and goofy with the kids, and there were these really subtle jokes that if you were an adult, you'd catch them with just the slightest wink and a nod. So while not everybody was laughing at the same things, they were still laughing. That, to me, is the way it should be. I think Bugsnax tried to go for that, but didn't quite stick the landing, and while the setting and exploration are kid-friendly, there's some content, more specifically dialogue, that I think makes this a little bit of a hard sell as primarily a kid's game, which is weird because it's rated E10 and up. But before we get into that stuff, let's talk about the story. You play a journalist in this world that's run by these puppet-looking people called Grumpus, or just Grumps. They look like 1970s era generic Jim Henson puppets with teeth from The Simpsons, and if that sounds terrible, it gets worse. I honestly didn't realize how horrible puppets looked with teeth until I played this. It's not natural, and like the creation of romantic comedies or X-Men 3, man was not meant to create this abomination, and I won't be surprised if it destroys us all. You go on a trip to find Elizabeth Megafig. She's over on Snacktooth Island and has made this huge discovery of these new bugs. When you get there, your ship gets wrecked and you're stuck on the island. From there, you find out Elizabeth went missing, and each of the characters you meet that were part of her team are all pissed off at each other because some major falling out they all had, and it's basically up to you to convince them all to get over themselves, come back to their village, and find out what happened to Elizabeth. All of that involves doing tasks, which almost always have to do with catching and feeding the titular Bugsnax to them. The story is actually not bad, and every character has a distinct personality, and I thought that was really charming. One of the characters, however, named Wiggle, is some sort of failed celebrity and insists on singing every other line of hers, and that made me want to punch her in the jaw. You ever have that friend who sings way too often or for way too long and nobody wants to be rude and tell them to shut up, so they take the resigned silence as everybody thinking they're great? Yeah, they all need to join Wiggle on this island and stay there. Anyways, being that this is marketed as a kid or family game, it was weird to me that the characters toss some light innuendo around, and in one of the fights that a couple characters have, one guy makes a comment about the other's wife leaving him, and I thought it was all a little too heavy for a kid to hear. You can interview characters as well, and some of that gets a little heavy-handed, especially when one of the characters really treats the Bugsnax as pets and doesn't want them eaten, which then, at least for me, coupled with Bugsnax that actually do fear being caught, made me feel guilty about catching and feeding them to the others. There's a few more instances of stuff like this, but I think you get where I'm going. I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is that I'm a parent myself, and my child more or less fits into the age group for this game, and I monitor what she plays. Everybody parents differently, but after all that, I don't let her play the story sections without me around because the dialogue is just on that borderline where I feel like I need to watch it in order to stop and explain why they're saying or doing whatever. The innuendo is different. She's not going to get those remarks, and I'm glad for that, but as someone who did catch it, I thought it was totally unnecessary for a kid's game. Again, none of this happens often, but it was just enough to keep me guarded. So how's the game itself play? Actually, pretty well. It's played in first person and had a Slime Rancher and Pokemon Snap vibe to it. Being that it's first person, it took me a few minutes to see these things and not want to reduce them to piles of gore with a shotgun, but once that subsided, I saw that each Bugsnax is this mini puzzle where you learn how to catch them. After scanning them and logging their info, you get this idea of their likes and their dislikes, their paths that they travel in, and all of this contributes in how to catch them. You don't take damage or die, so the reward really is in exploring and learning about these creatures in order to catch them. You get different traps and tools as you progress through the game that'll help you do this, and there's times where you're going to rely on just one tool or you'll combine some to catch them, and the feeling is pretty satisfying. The Bugsnax themselves are basically creepy crawly versions of different foods. Everything from fruits to veggies to crazier ones like sandwiches or pizza. Like there's flying lollipops, snails with shells that are giant cinnamon buns, a crab made of apples that's called, wait for it, a crapple. So you can tell the writers had a lot of fun being creative with this. There's also plants that sprout ketchup and chocolate and ranch dressing and more. You use these in your slingshot to help attract and catch the Bugsnax, but of course while I'm playing this, I'm thinking to myself, what if this was real? And we know the answer to that. Plants that grow chocolate or ranch dressing would have led to humanity getting the diabetes and dying out. Also, I can only hope that in this magical world, there's plants somewhere that would have sprouted bottles of bourbon or Irish whiskey, but then maybe that's just my problem and I need help. So as I said before, you collect these things and then feed them to the different characters. I have to talk about what happens next because it is horrifying and weird, and I don't know why it's even in here. When you feed a Bugsnax to a character, you'll get to choose which limb it affects, and then that part will change to the food they ate. You'll be giving them popcorn for noses or popsicle sticks for legs, things like that. I fed a Bugsnax called a weenie worm, I'm not joking, that's serious, to a character and gave her a hot dog for each arm, which is just ripe for so many dirty jokes that I don't even know where to start with that. It also makes me wish Harry Carey was around so that he could see someone actually turn into a ballpark hot dog. So each of these characters looks normal in the beginning, then after a few hours worth of you feeding them, they look like this idiot. Look at how stupid that looks. He was already a terrible character to begin with. How does anybody take you seriously with strawberries for hands? Regarding sound, the music is pretty chill, and the Bugsnax, for better or worse, have a lot of life to them. They do the Pokemon thing where they say their name a lot, but instead of only communicating that way, these things just do it constantly, and the voices can get pretty irritating if you're around them long enough. Also, the voice acting for these can get pretty bad, like they're these adults doing childlike toddler toy quality voices for some of these. And those I had no problem feeding to the Grumps at all. All the dialogue is fully voiced, which Wiggle and her ridiculous singing notwithstanding, I thought was a really nice touch. One critique I have of that though, is that a lot of the characters sounded too much like this was done in a recording studio, which is noticeable when you're talking to them all outdoors. Like, the voices are too clear and crisp, if that makes sense. I know it's really nitpicky, but it's something I wanted to bring up anyway. One last thing I want to note is that I did play this on the PS5, and the haptic feedback on the DualSense controller has to be mentioned because it's really cool. The buttons have different feelings and textures based on the tools you use, and doing simple things like walking through water can be felt through the vibrations in the controller, which helped add a lot more immersion to the game. Snapping a picture through the scanner felt like you were actually pushing the button on the camera. So to wrap up what became a much longer review than I planned for, there's fun to be had with Bugsnax's relaxing, catch-em-all gameplay and exploration, and there's an actual story to discover and play through as well. Just be sure that you're playing this with your child instead of letting them mess around with it by themselves. And really, you should be anyways, otherwise that's how you walk in on them playing Doom Eternal, even worse, Fortnite. And that's all I've got for this review. Subscribe and like to help me feel validated, and I'll see you again soon. Congratulations! You're one of an elite few to make it to the end of the video. Reward yourself by hitting the round subscribe button in the middle, and then check out the other goodies I've got and the links next to it.